I was going to see a physio, and again, it wasn't getting any better. So he said, maybe you should go and get it scanned. It could be like a rotary cuff tear or something. Then I did. I went to go and get an ultrasound on it, and they said there's no muscular or ligament damage. He was like, I think you should go and get a CT scan urgently. The whole of my humeral head had been taken over by breast cancer cells. And they said, I'm really sorry, it's secondaries. It's now incurable. You're going to be on treatment for life.
Hello, and welcome to the Thrive Against Cancer podcast, where we give a voice to the cancer community. My name is Toby Freeman, founder and CEO of the Robin Cancer Trust, cancer advocate, and your host. Every episode, we will be hosting open and honest conversations with people affected by cancer, whether personally, as a family member, clinician, or charities and organisations. We will be talking to the cancer community about the cancer community and all the things that are important to you. Our guest today is 36 years old and living life navigating incurable metastatic breast cancer. Diagnosed originally 10 years ago at the age of 25 and then re-diagnosed with stage 4 cancer only 2 years later. She's had to learn to live with the new normal, face her mortality daily and give herself new purpose, creating a support network called Secondary Sisters. Our guest today is Laura Middleton-Hughes. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is very, very exciting, and I know you've travelled a long way to be here, and I just am so excited to hear your entire story and talk about all the things, because when we had our catch-up before this, you were like an open book, and it was absolutely brilliant. So,
Absolutely. So my story started 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now. It was I was traveling in Australia for 5 weeks, having the holiday of a lifetime, kind of that one before you think about settling down. And it was just after New Year. I can't remember exactly where I was in Australia, but I just remember showering one morning and came across a little lump in my left breast. I was 25, as you said. I didn't think it was going to be anything. I just thought, oh, it'll be a hormonal cyst or something. I told my now husband, then boyfriend, Brad, who had a feel. He could also feel something, but again, really, really tiny. And so we just carried on with our trip another couple of weeks. And then when we were at Hong Kong airport, I remember him just saying, look, book appointment with the doctor. It's still there. You should probably go and get it looked at. And so I did. A couple of weeks later, went to see my GP. I was very fortunate that my GP, she was like, I don't think it's anything. It moves. It's not painful, like all the kind of signs of it not being anything. But she said, I'm not an expert and I'd like to just get a second opinion just to make sure. And thank goodness she said that, because I did find out later that in my doctor's surgery, where there are quite a few GPs, that only one other would have referred me. Everyone else would have said, because of my age, they would have waited the month or whatever it is. So 2 weeks later passed. I went to the hospital, had I think it was an ultrasound to start with, then a biopsy, which I knew I was going to have. And then, then they did a mammogram before, and then they did a biopsy. But initially I was told I wouldn't have a mammogram because breasts are too dense and you don't see enough. So when they mammogrammed me, I was a little bit concerned. I was like, they've seen something they're not happy with. But even then, I don't think my head went to cancer. I don't think I even thought it could be. And so then you have to wait for the results, which everything just takes so long, or it feels like such a long time, that waiting game. And I hadn't told anybody. I think I'd mentioned it to one of my best friends like the day before. And so no one else knew I'd even found a lump apart from Brad. And so we went to hospital, went in 9 o'clock in the morning, sat down, and my consultant just said, I'm really sorry, it's breast cancer. And that moment, life just changed. I don't remember much from that appointment. I just remember being numb. I can't really describe it. It's just numb. I had no idea what people, go through with cancer. I didn't know anyone my age with it. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. But I knew at that point that I would have to have mastectomy, chemotherapy, and there was talks of radiotherapy as well. And for someone that's never had an operation, that's probably never tried anything stronger than paracetamol, these were all such new territory to me. And then it was the going home and breaking the news to everybody, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I remember calling my mum at the time. She was very, very poorly with a neurological illness. So I knew I couldn't tell her or speak to her about it until I knew
Mm.
all the answers. But I got Brad to call my dad and just say, Laura's in hospital. She needs you. Like, can you get here? And he lived Felixstowe at the time, so it's not the closest, probably about an hour and a half from me. And he did just jump in his car and come. And I remember, having to tell him that I've got cancer. So that's, that it is life changing.
Mm.
And then, luckily, I had all the scans, and it hadn't at that point spread anywhere else. I then went through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, which I started within 3 weeks of diagnosis, so quite quick. Didn't have time to do any egg harvesting, or because it was HER2 positive and estrogen positive. So lots of things were fueling it, and it actually grew 5.5 centimeters in 3 weeks.
That's
So
aggressive.
yeah, so chemo was like immediate.
And I suppose you don't have time to think about these things. You're not
No.
thinking particularly about these. You're just
I
being
felt like I was
acting.
on a conveyor belt. It was just to have to do it.
Mm.
I didn't have time to think. It wasn't a time to sort of sit there and go, woe is me. It's like, holy crap, this is all happening. Chemotherapy, as we know, is vile. Like, lost my hair, felt really sick. Like, it was hard, really hard. And I think it's that, again, you can't be near people if they, got a cold or something. So actually, you sort of isolate yourself a lot.
Mm.
Then in the August, I had my first surgery, which was my mastectomy. Again, never had an operation. Knew I was going to have to be flat for a while because they wanted to do reconstruction. Radiotherapy. So I wouldn't be able to have reconstruction for at least a year. And again, mentally, not only getting your head around being really poorly, and I'd say when I became bald, and especially after my surgery, that's when I felt like a cancer patient. Because actually before that, I felt still me. I didn't feel ill or anything with the cancer.
They're very physical
yeah.
reminders, aren't they? Yeah.
And I did try to carry on working. I was a hairdresser at the time. Carried on. I mean, financially, I couldn't not. There was no help for me at that point. And yeah, then I had to have radiotherapy. So this was a few months after my surgery. I then had the radiotherapy, which again, I think people underestimate. A lot of people kind of say, oh, the chemotherapy is really bad. But actually, firstly, I looked like someone had stuck an iron on my chest. It was literally blisters, red raw. But the fatigue, I mean, I was tired enough through chemo, but the fatigue just absolutely whacked me out. And I had to take some time off work to kind of recover from that. But then, I finished. I was still on hormonal treatment and another drug called Herceptin, which I was having for the year. But, I was told they'd removed the cancer. I was now kind of all clear and tried to get back to life, living, which, again, I think people don't talk about enough, is that moment where you're kind of set free from the hospital. But actually, because you've been so confined to appointments, literally ruling your life, to suddenly be in a position where you're kind of left on your own with no backup, it's quite scary. And you kind of are trying to find this new normal, which, you're never going to be Laura pre-cancer again. And people expect you to kind of be there, but you don't.
Is that, when you say people expect you, is that friends, family, like you've gone through it, you're done, you're better now,
Oh
right?
yeah. All the but you'll be fine now. Oh,
You're young,
you're
you'll
young,
get
you'll
over
be
it.
all right.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. And even Brad, he'd admit that at the time he thought I would kind of be back to me, and it was a really difficult period of time. And I think I threw myself into lots of challenges at that point. I signed up to do a Copperfield trek because
Shout out Copperfield.
Yeah, good old Copperfield. Because I was like, I need to do something. And I was just like, they were going to Iceland, and I was like, oh, I really want to. I've been before. I went years ago when I was at school, but I was like, oh, Iceland, I really want to do that again, and a challenge.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, let's go for it. Let's sign up. And
What
I got
was
in.
the challenge?
It was a 50-kilometer trek in Iceland for over 4 days. 4 days, I think it was 4 or 5 days.
Just a nice, easy trek through glaciers and
over volcanoes, over glaciers, all sorts. But do you know what? It was the best thing because it did give me something to focus on. And then in so that was 2015 when I kind of celebrated, yay, everything's going good, and hopefully this will be fine. And thinking, right, okay, well, I can't have children for at least 5 years. Then I can come off my medication and think about having a family. So in my head, there was still that hope. There was still hope of the things that I had kind of lost. And then things didn't go quite the way I planned. So I was training for this trek. I was at the gym. One of my local gyms had seen in the paper that I was doing it and offered PT sessions.
Real.
Fantastic. And so I was doing that. And in one of the sessions, I was doing a lot of arms and it felt like I'd pulled a muscle. I was like, oh God, this is not good. So I carried on doing all my training, but just didn't do a lot of upper body for a few weeks. And this pain kind of was there, but it wasn't ridiculous. It was just kind of a niggle. And as I said before, my mum was really poorly. She had a neurological illness and she was going downhill. And she actually passed away in the June of 2016. So I found the pain began in the beginning of the May. She passed away end of June. And then I did the Copperfield trek, which was I think it was in the August. And then it wasn't until after that I was like, okay, my shoulder's really not getting any better.
But understandably, there's a lot going on in
There's
that
a lot
period.
going on,
We're
which I
not
kind of
focused on it. Yeah.
didn't think about it. And eventually I ended up going, well, I was going to see a physio. And again, it wasn't getting any better. So he said, maybe you should go and get it scanned. It could be like a rotary cuff tear or something. So then I did. I went to go and get an ultrasound on it. And they said there's no muscular or ligament damage. When was your last bone scan? And I was like, well, February, because I did have one in the February of that year. I can't even remember why. And that was clear. And he was like, I think you should go and get a CT scan urgently. I was like, okay, fine.
Anxiety rushing
Anxiety.
through.
Oh my goodness, that moment. And I remember I went for my CT scan, and within 2 hours of leaving the hospital, I had a phone call from my doctor. So it had gone from them to radiographers to my doctor to me within 2 hours, which is, as we know, unheard of. And they just said, I think you need an appointment with your oncologist. We're going to prescribe you some morphine. And I'm like, oh, what? And by this point, I couldn't move my arm very well. Like it was very sore. But I think your body, there's this level of pain that I think your body, if it gradually increases, you get used to it.
Yeah.
So as much as I couldn't do a lot movement wise, I don't think I realized how bad the pain had got.
Yeah, you just overcompensate in other ways.
Yeah, because it was funny that paracetamol was fine until I knew what it was, and then morphine didn't even cut it. And yeah, so the whole of my humeral head had been taken over by breast cancer cells. It had fractured part way down the arm as well. And at that point, yeah, I went into the appointment and they said, I'm really sorry, it's secondaries. It's now incurable. You're going to be on treatment for life. You know, your dream of having children is gone. Your career is gone because we're going to have to do a full shoulder replacement. Literally, I would say everything just at that point, you know, just went. Every dream I had, every thought I had. And because I'd left it, obviously 6 months from the May till now October, I then hadn't at that point had a full body scan, and I literally thought, right, that's it. It's going to be everywhere. I'm going to be dead in 2 weeks. So when they did do a full body scan and they said it's just in the spine and the pelvis, I mean, I was like, woohoo! I know, yeah, just secondaries that spread around your body. But the relief of that was huge. But even then, I mean, this is going back now, 2016. Most, you know, everything in the papers, everything you read, 2 to 5 years max. So, yeah, I just lost everything. It was a really tough time. And you're thrown back into this whirlwind of diagnosis. You know, you see that impact on your friends and your family, which I think sometimes is actually one of the harder parts because, you know, you can cope with your own feelings and thoughts, but watching everyone else crumble is really difficult.
And you've already had that experience once. And you're seeing it compounding, both for you, obviously.
Absolutely. And for Brad, you know, he'd been with me the whole journey, and I think he had hoped that it was just that was it. That our future was now okay, and then it's into this real unknown again. But this time and I sort of say to everyone, it is like literally just enter this dark hole, and you sort of have to try and find those light moments because that darkness can really, really overtake. And a lot of people now will sort of say, how do you cope with, because I am quite a positive person, but that time I wasn't. I had to find that again. It was difficult.
How, I suppose you said you're in a dark hole and you just have to, how do you even begin to, you've been through all of that and you're just starting to find your new normal, and then this word incurable is said. How do you manage to deal with that at that point, telling family and friends as well. Like, how did you navigate that, you and Brad?
A lot of tears,
Mm.
a lot of tears. I think so. We actually had booked. It was my husband's birthday the day after, so we weren't married at this point. But I got diagnosed on the 14th, and his birthday's on the 15th of October. And we'd booked to actually go to France for a few days. And my nurse said to me, "Go, like go." And so I told my dad and my sisters and sort of a few of the immediate friends that I really wanted to know sort of that day. We went away and I spent the 3 days basically trying to write. So I had kind of blogged through my primary journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I then spent those days trying to put together something to say what had happened because I hadn't the energy to tell everybody individually. And so I did. I put it out. It was basically, sorry guys, I'm back in sort of the thick of it again. But in a way, that gave me a chance to switch my phone off, focus on me and Brad for a couple of days, and I sort of left that too. And then when I came back to the UK, I sort of turned everything back on again, and that's when I then looked at all the messages, and I needed that escape. I think I needed that time just for me and him to process what we were going through, because it's massive. It is,
Yeah.
well, life changing, literally. And just then thinking about how to navigate the next few months. When you have an incurable diagnosis, you can't think far ahead. It is like, what is the next step? And that's happened even now. Even now, I can't really focus more than sort of 6 months ahead. And I think that's quite normal because life is not ever going to be simple. I then had to so my first point of call after that was having a big shoulder operation. So I had to have the whole of my humeral bone removed. Let's just say I won't be doing that again if I need to. God, it was awful. It was the most horrendous thing. I was in Birmingham, so very far away from my local town, in hospital for 8 days, and you're told that this might be an operation that you'll never have any form of movement in your arm. Like, they don't know how much range you'll get when you come around or when you're able to start moving it again, because it's every little muscle and, the bone and everything's been removed. And so everything's having to be reattached in different places. And they were brilliant. Like, they were fantastic. But it's that when you're dealing with such an life-changing operation as well as a diagnosis, that's also really hard to get your head around. And I knew as soon as I was healed from that, I'd have to go through more chemo. My head only just grown back, and now I'm going to have to go through it again. But I remember sitting there in hospital, and I think this is where I suppose my life kind of ended, and then it kind of came back again, because I was like, do you know what? Right, I've got two ways of going here. I can sit there and complain and moan and cry and hate the world and say, why is me?
Which you would have every right to do.
Which I could have done, and everyone would have been absolutely, probably, fine with that.
Yeah.
Or I go, do you know what? I may only have a couple of years, but how the hell can I make this like the best couple of years ever? What can I do? So I was lying there in bed in the hospital, and I remember writing down a living list. I didn't want a bucket list, because bucket list to me was like, I'm going to be
We know
gone.
what that implies.
No, I'm not going. I wanted a living list. I needed something to give me some hope.
Mm-hmm.
I needed things on there that my friends and family might then do with me in between treatments. Or if I'm having a bad day, I can go, do you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to book that. I'm going to, just things to bring me joy. And I think it was that moment that I went, right, I'm going to make this good. I'm going to, it is going to be hard. We're going to have so many challenges to face along the way. There are going to be moments where I scream and cry, and that is completely normal and okay. But I'm not going to dwell on the negatives. I'm not going to sit here and think about the fact that I might not be here in 6 months or a year's time. I'm going to focus on now. And if I'm well enough to get out of bed today and I can do something that makes me smile, then that's a good day.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of, where my mindset shifted a little bit.
Do you know where that mindset came from? Do you think that was inherent? Was that partly with what you'd already been through, or was there things that inspired that, things you'd seen, or?
Do you know what? It was my mum.
Was it?
Yeah, we lost her in the June of that year. And she, for the 5 years she was ill, she went downhill very quickly, and she was to a point where she was in a wheelchair, couldn't move, couldn't talk, had to have carers 24/7, had no dignity, had no life. And she'd always said to me when the kids all leave home, so when my younger sister turned 18, she wanted to get a little house in the south of France that she could go to for a few months every year, and that was always her dream. And I think it was that moment of me going, she never got to fulfill her dream. She never got to, she always put off doing it until we were grown up, and then she got ill, and that dream never became a reality. And so in some funny way, it was me almost going, well, Mum would have wanted me to do things that maybe she would have wanted to do. And we were left a little bit of inheritance money from her. My sisters all went to put it on deposits for houses, and I went, the bank's not having my money. I need it. So then it was a case of, right, where can we go? What can we do? So it was like, I can't have kids. We're getting a puppy, which was one of the first things we did. Yep. I'd always wanted to go to the Maldives. So I was like, sod it. We're going into Keone and going to buy a really expensive holiday to the Maldives, because my mum would have said, do it.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I think she really inspired me on having that living list.
I think it's a beautiful legacy for your mum to inspire that. Can we ask what's on I know we've got puppy and Maldives. What was on the living list?
I have completed a lot. Oh gosh, what's on there? So we've had everything from like posh afternoon teas at like Claridge's, walking alpacas.
As you do.
Yeah, reading the weather. I read the weather forecast on a local TV station. One of my friends had put it on there. I was like, really? There's like seeing certain countries. I mean, lots on there. There is lots and lots I've completed, things. And I've got things still like, staying in a tree house, or like I've done the going, glamping, and there's certain concerts I want to go and see. And there's just things, even now I'm still adding
Name
to
drop them. Let's see if we can make any of this happen.
I have to get my list out. My memory's gone blank exactly but I mean, Orient Express, I'd love to do that. It's a bit out of my budget. Fly business class, haven't done that yet. And that can anyone can make that happen.
Someone help us out.
Private jet, even better. But yeah, so what's been really good is actually, so like my sisters, for example, one of the things was going to see the Pretty Woman musical, and so for Christmas they bought me tickets to go and see it.
Bro.
So it's things like that actually, even now, 7 years on, it's still being useful.
Love that idea. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure we could all do with a living list, to be honest.
Well, you don't have to be ill to have one.
Right.
I think, that's the thing I've hopefully inspired with most of my followers on Instagram is you don't have to be ill. You don't have to be in a position, everyone should have a living list, whatever age, whatever you're doing in life, because people put off things. And this is what I say with my mum, like you've put off doing things for that rainy day.
Yeah.
But actually that rainy day might never come along, and you need to sort of enjoy life now. And if that's one thing I've, taken from my diagnosis, is don't dwell on, like, I may never, like traveling, for example, while I'm well enough, I want to do it. Like I did Disneyland Paris with a friend of mine. It was great, really good fun. And things like that, like maybe I would have said, I'll do it later when maybe my niece and nephew are older, but actually you can do it still, enjoy.
Grown-ups can go to Disneyland on their own.
Absolutely. And so going through then the operation, had my living list. That living list helped me get through then the chemo. Obviously I had to give up work as well, so I lost a full purpose of life, lost my business, which was probably, that and the children were the hardest things, because they were both, your business defines you a lot of the time. I was Laura who had a successful wedding hair, and I was a hairdresser and did wedding hair business, to suddenly Laura with cancer. And I didn't want to be just Laura with cancer, but you do this, the narrative just is there. And there is a lot of sympathy looks, and it's hard. It's really hard, because you're never going to be the normal well person. That's what I do say sometimes. I just wish for one day I could just be Laura without cancer. That doesn't happen.
I think two things you mentioned there I don't think are talked enough about. Is the financial impact of cancer generally. It'd be interesting to dive into how you navigated that, because losing your business is losing all your income. And the definition of throughout and afterwards being the person, cancer being the defining thing. I think regaining that identity, no matter where you
Yeah.
are, is really, really important.
And it's just a challenge. Financially, do you know what? If my mum hadn't passed away when she did, I would be probably screwed. Like you get very little help from the government, um, and what you do get, you do feel guilty for claiming benefits. I mean, everyone, it's just horrible. Like when you had your own business and you're independent, and then suddenly you are, I've got to have some help
Yeah.
here. And as I say, the only reason I can do anything is firstly I've got a really supportive husband who is very much like, we will go on that holiday. I will work a bit extra to make sure we can do that if need be.
Shout out Brad. We're shouting
Shout out
out
Brad. But equally, I have been independent
Mm.
to a point because my mum, like, I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to live, like, pay my rent with the money my mum left me because I now can't afford to
Yeah.
work. And it's so people sometimes will go, oh, but why can't you work? Why don't you go and get a job? But navigating a cancer admin life, I'm in hospital so often. Like one week, I literally had 4 appointments in the week. So I'm in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Like, how many businesses are going to let you have that time off? You could do something yourself, but it's such a challenge because mentally and physically, it's knackering. I can do maybe a few hours of voluntary work a week,
Mm.
and then I'm done. But give me an 8-hour day on a computer, and I'd be like a fried egg. Like it wouldn't work.
I think it's fair to say the mental load of living with cancer is a full-time job.
And the medication
Yeah.
that impacts your cognability and
Mhm.
your just patience and your everything, how you can sustain just doing stuff.
Mm.
And people often will say, oh, but you went on a dog walk today, and it's like, yeah, but that also takes so much energy to do. That's I have to factor my rest around even those little
Yeah.
things. People don't see that, and I think this is the positives of our Instagram are great, but the negatives are they see the snippet of your life and they think that is
Yeah.
your everyday, and it's not. And they don't see the days where you curl up on the sofa and literally do nothing, and you have to factor those in.
Mm.
And I'd probably say now, so we're now 7.5 years on, and treatment, shout out NHS, because I have had an amazing experience considering COVID and all the other stuff. But I'm still undergoing treatment every 3 weeks. My medication for some reason is still working, which is incredible because I was told it might only work for 18 months and it's over 7 years. But physically, I've got my hair back. I do now go to the gym. I feel, I am probably a bit more active than I have been for a while. But it's that mental strain.
Mm.
And actually that long-term living with a diagnosis, it takes a lot just to get through each day because you've always, and there's this really good analogy that I've seen actually, I think on Facebook or Instagram, where it's imagine someone is holding a gun to the back of your head and walking around behind you, and you don't know when that trigger will get pulled, but that person is, you know, following you around everywhere you go. How that, how would you feel? Like you would feel scared constantly. You would feel anxious. You would feel like, oh, I can't walk too fast in case they.
Mm.
You're aware of it every single minute of every single day. And this is where I was, saying I wish I could have a day where cancer just isn't there. You wake up and it's just for one day, not part of your life, because it is like that gun being held to the back of your head all the time.
Yeah, I think that analogy will resonate with a lot of people. And I think anyone, regardless, that's just had a mental health issue, anxiety or depression, knows the mental load that takes as well.
Mm.
Adding on top of all the other things must be completely exhausting.
Yeah.
And again, that's not particularly talked about. I suppose there's still stigma around talking about these things. And where have you found community to be able to be open and honest and learn about these sort of things? And
So I was very lucky in the early days. Where I am in Norwich, we had a young women's breast cancer support group, which was run by some individuals who had breast cancer. And so I met a few people through that, which was incredible. And I actually ended up running the group. Sort of handed over reins. There was a few of us that then run it off the back of the original lot.
Cool.
And so that was brilliant because it's a way I could meet people. I mean, I was probably one of the youngest by still quite a few years, but I did manage to meet. I mean, we'll talk about her, I'm sure, but Owa
Mm.
Hackett, who is founder of Little Lists, one of the incredible charities that I am proud ambassador for. And we met. She was 28, I was 26 at the time when I met her, and we just bonded because we were young. You know, there's
Yeah.
another couple of girls in our group that again became sort of there was a little five of us that ended up calling ourselves the famous five. And so, and we're still, I'm actually seeing them tomorrow. We're going for afternoon tea, which would be lovely. We lost, sadly, one of the girls very suddenly a few years ago. Has came back. And again, this is where it's really scary. It can come back so quickly. And then sadly, she passed away within only a few months. But, you know, we're still really close and that support is invaluable. But what I found is when I got my secondary diagnosis, I then had that tackling, sort of talking to people who have just had a primary diagnosis or that are very kind of scared about the idea of getting a secondary. And I'm sitting there kind of saying, so how are you? And they'd tell me about their diagnosis. And then they'd say, well, where are you in your journey? And I'm like, well, mine came back and it's secondary, which is incurable. And you could see the terror on their faces. So I felt at that time I needed to step away. So I did. And I felt that, again, at 28 with a secondary diagnosis, there was very, very little support. There was very few people that I could relate to. The people that I did know with secondaries were maybe 20, 30 years older than me. And so it was actually a meetup it was another like campaign where they had about 40 people with cancer in this campaign, and only about six of us had secondaries. And one of them was Nikki, who we were the same age, similar like diagnosis. Hers was just estrogen, mine was HER2 and estrogen. She couldn't have children, you know, so we just connected.
Mm.
And off the back of that, we chatted, and then we ended up meeting up in London. And I, at this point, had thought I want to do something, and she had kind of thought the same. So we sort of said, why don't we do something together? And over a glass of wine and a bit of cake, we were like, oh, let's call it Secondary Sisters. And within, I think, 2 days, I'd set up an Instagram page, an email address. She's like, oh, we're doing this then. I was like, yes, we are. And we just put it out there. And we got some interest with Stand Up to Cancer, who came and did a photo shoot with us. Photo shoot, which was us just in a pair of black thongs with writing all over our bodies, which was a very interesting thing to do in her kitchen. Uh, but these pictures,
It's again the unglamorous side that people don't see on Instagram.
precisely. But yeah, those pictures, we didn't know that it would go so big, but they went viral. Like every newspaper was showing them. My husband made me laugh. He's like, "You've done Daily Mail, you've done The Sun, you made the Telegraph, and that is a good thing." So we made all that. We ended up doing like a live interview on Sky News. We did Channel 5 News. We did local news. We did loads of radio stations. So the word just went out, and we were growing so fast. Like I think the first year, we were growing over 1,000 a month. And we realized that there was a need for people to not only find a community, because obviously being secondaries and, you know, people not maybe knowing there's other people out there with the same, but also educating people that don't know about secondary cancer. Because when you did say I've got secondaries, people just went, how long have you got? A lot of the time, rather than knowing a bit more about it. So it was that educating side of it as well, and just creating awareness and opening up those conversations. Because again, I found it very, very difficult to talk to people about my feelings around death, my feelings around, you know, future treatments, because people didn't want to hear the negatives.
Holds up a mirror, right? Makes everyone scared and nervous, and
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And so by doing it through the page and being able to sort of open up these conversations, having lives, and we used to do different things with different charities, we just realized there was a need. And selfishly, I did it because I was lonely and needed someone myself. So I think from my, you know, I gained so much from it. You know, I gained a community, but equally, what's so wonderful is I see communities growing and friendships being built still off the back of the page. And even though we're not massively, like, sadly, we lost Nikki last September, and I'm still running it. And we now are trying to do little meetups around the country to sort of enable smaller little groups to get together. I can still see it flourish, and that the need is still there for it. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of, like, we're not a charity. I don't want to be a charity. Like, I don't want the hassle of
It's
all
a
of
lot of red
that.
tape.
A lot of red
Yeah.
tape, but we managed to raise a little bit just to help us fund us going around the country to help these people. I do everything voluntarily. It's just because I want to try and help people, and I think keeping the name out there, because it was so important at the time for me and Nikki, and to keep Nikki's name there. And I've got another girl, Gemma, who's on board with it as well. She's been helping for a couple of years. So yeah, it's a really amazing thing to do, and that's where I think I found my support network, because of doing that.
I think well, I know I speak for everyone when I say it's amazingly inspirational, and you are having a massive impact. I think if you can tally finding a purpose with your own catharsis for whatever you're going through whilst helping other people, that's
Mm.
like the perfect trifecta. And that's what it sounds like that you've
It's
found
as you
in
say,
this.
finding the purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I felt that I needed a purpose in
Mm.
life again, and I mean, I do a lot of voluntary work anyway. Like, I do, as you say, Little Lifts. I'm ambassador for them. I do volunteer for them. They're an incredible charity. I do campaigns for breast cancer now. I've done stuff with Trek Stock. I've done stuff with Copperfield. Like, literally, I am one of these people that I want to be involved. I'm not a sort of one, I don't know, one thing fits me. It's
Mm.
like, I want to just help. If it's to do with cancer, it's to do with young people, it's to do with opening up conversations and helping, then I'm game. Like, and doing even this, just being able to sort of talk about my story, and share the light that maybe some people are very new to this and just had their diagnosis. And as I said, like, people come to me sometimes and like, oh, you're so positive. How are you positive? But they forget that I've been through all that
Yeah.
7 years ago. And people even now sort of don't even know that I've gone through chemotherapy twice, lost my hair twice, had 8 operations, actually 9 now because I had one earlier this year. Um, had the radiotherapy. I have hit rock bottom.
Mm.
And I think sometimes you do. I'm so fortunate, and I shouldn't really say that I'm lucky to still be here, but I am, because I didn't think I would be. But then I think we spoke briefly on the phone, actually, when we were talking before coming here, that comes with its own challenges,
Mm.
because financially, I didn't think I'd be here more than 5 years. So, like, I'm like, okay, so now how do I finance my life if I run out of money? So it's all these, and it's, in a way, it does get harder in that mental strain, because I think people, it's that whole, after the primary diagnosis, people just assume you're okay. And I do get that a lot of the time. Oh, but you'll be fine. Oh, you've been 7 years. You'll be here in 20. And I'm like, but I might be not in 6 months. And you don't want to be the negative Nancy in the room,
Mm.
but you are constantly on this knife edge, and you do not know when that's going to slip. And I think, I mean, I'm all for, analogies and stuff, but I explained it at an event. I did a speech at a ball last year, and I said it's like being on a roller coaster that you get on, and it's never going to stop. And you go up and you go down, but you don't know when you're going up or down. You go through tunnels that are dark, you come out back into the light, and one day the track will run out. And when that does, you will fly and you will drop. And it's that you just don't know when that track's going to run out, because everybody that I know with breast cancer that has got to the end has been fine up until probably a month or two before they die. And then it's literally, they just go free falling, and it's so fast. And that is the scary part. And that's coming. And I think that's where the mental strain, that's coming.
Yeah.
And as much as you go, oh yeah, but you'll be fine, it's like, but I won't. Cancer will get me one way or another. It might not be this year, it might not be next year, but it's, and I'm the sort of person that I'd like to know. I would actually like someone to tell me you've only got 3 years left, because I hate this unknown. I hate the whole, well, it could be this year, because you can't plan. You can't, I don't know. Even like, I've got a niece and nephew. I want to see them grow up. I want to be that auntie that, they get to know.
Every light must have such a shade to it.
Yeah.
Like it's like a constant grief that you can't be that you can't
You
allow
can't
yourself to be
you can't grieve.
consumed by. Yeah.
Yeah. You're kind of constantly grieving without being able to grieve.
Yeah.
It's a really weird one. And it's things like, I'm quite open about talking about
Mm.
death now, and that's weird. I find it
Yeah.
weird that I can like have a conversation about my funeral
I
or
was going to say, have
you
you
know.
planned and
So
like,
I
do you?
no, I haven't planned it fully. I've definitely written down wishes,
Mhm.
and I've got kind of
You seem like a planner, so I thought
yeah,
it'd be
I've got ideas. I've got
yeah,
kind of songs. I've got but again, I'm one of these people also does change my mind quite a lot. So what I wanted 7 years ago is actually not really what I
fair.
want now. So I kind of don't want to have it fully set
Yeah.
in stone. But I do know, there's certain things I've got I own. I want to go to certain people in the
Mhm.
family, and yeah, I haven't quite got to the point where I'm, writing letters or doing that. But I know that when that time does come, that I will do
Yeah.
it. I just think, yeah, I'm sort of still in that. Oh, things are quite good, and even naively, like I can sometimes get complacent. Oh, things are good,
Mm.
and then suddenly you'll have like a scan that's a little bit funny, and you're like, oh no, oh god, what's going on? And like, I've got an amazing team, but they can only do so much.
Yeah. How often are you monitored at the moment?
I have scans every 3 months. I have CTs every 3 months. I have heart scans also every 3 months because one of the drugs I'm on can affect
Right.
my heart. And then I'm in hospital every 3 weeks for bloods and treatment. Um, but when you say that to people are like, oh, that's only like once every so often, and it's like, but then you have all the other tests, and you have the other consultant appointments, the physio appointments, the even oh my god, even trying to get a cannula the other day took an hour and a half. Like
I saw
people,
that on your social,
oh,
yeah.
I mean, my poor little finger. I actually went through. Never had it in 7 or 10 years. Never had a cannula in my finger before.
I didn't know they did that, I have
No,
to
no, I've
admit.
got a lovely bruise there now. No, I didn't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
The girl who did it was like, "This is the third time I've done it ever." I was like, "Great!" It's like, "Yeah, I'll be a guinea pig."
Yeah.
But even a simple blood test can take hours, and it just yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And the anxiety and that must build up every time, I guess. Like that's again a
It's
mental
again something
load.
that's worse now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't often realize it until so I have my scan. There's always about a 3 week wait
Mhm.
because it's just so backlogged at the moment, which is a long time.
Yeah.
So I try not to worry about it until maybe a week before I know I'm getting my results. But I then usually get my scan result, and then I'll definitely be ill for a few days because I think it's your body's
Yeah.
way of kind of going, whew,
Yeah.
and then your body like gets poorly or run down. And it's that I don't realize how much stress and strain and anxiety I'm holding until that point.
Mm.
And then you realize. And I notice it in my husband. I know he gets a bit aggy and a bit kind of stressed a week or two before my scan results. And it's just because he, again, is really concerned.
Yeah.
Because what changes for me changes for him and my family, and it's not just your life that it's going to affect. And I'm the one, I say it a lot. I'm the one that's going to be in the box at the end of the day. They're the ones going to have to be picking up the pieces, dealing with, it all. And so I kind of get out lightly because I'm not that one that's going to be watching it happen. And I think if the ball's on the other foot, I don't know how I'd cope. I think I'm glad I'm the patient because I
That's
can,
interesting. I've heard that a couple of
yeah,
times recently.
because
Yeah.
it's that, how do you, I mean, yeah,
Well, you can
how do they
control
cope with
how
you?
you're feeling. It's what you
Yeah.
said earlier, isn't it? You can control you, but you can't control
I
the
can't control
effect
what
of
happens
everything.
after. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm, when I'm not here, how, like, I can't make sure that my husband's okay or
Mm.
my family are okay or that my memory lives on. Like, I can't control that. And I think it's taken me a while to accept that. So I think in the beginning, I, I held on to a lot of that. I
Mm.
held on to that kind of, I suppose, that worry and that, but you can't. You've just got to go, do you know what happens, happens. And I can't be in control of how life plays out after I'm not here.
No, everything you're doing now is the legacy, isn't it? That's the good work you are doing and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And like, yeah,
yeah.
I enjoy it as well. I enjoy helping. And hopefully it'll make a difference, as you say, with the secondary sisters. And, if it can just make ethos was always if it can help one person, then it's done a good job.
It's exactly why we set up the charity.
Yeah.
Help one person. That's all you need to do. That's
Yeah.
all you need to do good work, right? It's just one person.
And it's the ripple effect that is huge. It is because you say the one person, but that one person will go on and hopefully help someone else because of your kindness or your
Yep.
ability. And it's amazing that you can be someone that does that or starts that in such a negative space in life. It's so weird. This whole cancer life is weird.
It is so weird. But yeah, I just know people listening, like so much of that will resonate with
Mm.
them. Has social media as a whole, has that been really, I suppose the word is cathartic for you? Has that really helped through this, that connectivity and maybe just expressing,
Yeah.
putting these things out there for the world?
So I found at the very beginning in my primary diagnosis, you'd go to chemo and you'd have about 100 messages from all your friends and loved ones being like, "Hope it was okay. Let us know how you are. Are you okay?" I couldn't keep up.
Mm,
Like when you're being sick and you're
yeah.
feeling awful, you just can't answer to everyone. So I set up a page on Facebook and called it Bald, Boobless and Beautiful. And I put everything on there. So it's like, I've had treatment today, guys. I'm not feeling great. I'll see you in 2 days. Or,
Yeah.
it was kind of anytime I wanted to update the masses,
Hmm.
it would go on there, which was really helpful. Um, it gave me a lot less stress and agony. And, it meant people knew exactly what was going on. I didn't have to repeat myself 6 times over
Yep.
because that in itself is knackering. When things shifted a bit more to Instagram, I decided, okay, well, I'll do a bit more on there. Set up my page again, called it the same, Bored, Boobus and Beautiful. And again, it was literally just a space for me to, yeah, just let out what I was
Mm,
feeling, um, post a little bit, post some memories, bit of a storyboard for my loved ones
yeah.
when I'm not around. I never expected to make, like, I was never going into it going, I'm going to be an influencer or I'm going to start something. And it just kind of grew and grew, and people, it's just random people that want to follow you. I was like, this is weird. Someone from, I don't know, New Zealand wants to follow me. But then I'd get messages from people saying, because of you, I've coped with my own diagnosis, or because of you, my daughter now checks her breasts, or I now talk to so and so about, the charities that are out there. And I realized that, just by putting a bit of information on every so often, it doesn't, I'm
Mm,
not someone that posts every day, or, my posts aren't always, I'm not someone that's very following the rules, it's got to be all this color or, that type of content. I'm
yeah.
very much this is my life, this is my page. And I'll get really random ones that, I've worked really hard on that will get 5 likes. And then I'll put something like my finger yesterday and I've got like, I don't know, 1,200, because people, it relates,
Yeah.
people are like, oh my God, I've had bad cannulas,
Yeah.
I struggle with my veins. And I like looking back sometimes, and it reminds me of like how far I have come,
Mm,
because I started actually last year going back over my story, and I need to carry on actually, but I went back right to the beginning and I was doing posts of like, this was what it was when I first got diagnosed. And again, the amount of people that were like, I never knew that, because they've followed me for maybe a year
yeah.
or two, but they never knew that I'd gone through all of that prior.
Mm,
So in a way, digging up the past has been quite cathartic and quite actually therapeutic for me as well. But yeah, as you say, it's an outlet.
mm,
It is an outlet that you can say what you want, and you'll always have someone who's backing you and got your corner. And there'll be always, some Karen out there that decides,
always.
that your posts are ridiculous and you're, I don't know, an attention seeker, or there's always someone out there. And that is hard. That is hard.
Of
When I
course it
first
is.
got my
Yeah.
Karen, I was a bit like, oh, can't deal with Karens anymore. But
Supporters deal with Karens quite well, I think.
oh, I've had
Yeah.
like, they jump on it.
Yeah.
It's great. The odd comment, and I'm like, oh, I can see my feed is
Yeah.
lighting up from
Leave
responses. Leave
this.
it too.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. But, when you have had a bad day, or you say something that, I don't know, like when you have had bad anxiety or a bad scan or a problem, the support, even if you think no one's watching, they come out of the woodwork and they are there. And just those messages. And I think people don't realize how much a little message of just going, I'm thinking of you.
Mm,
It could be someone that you've never met, you don't even know, but you're getting these people that don't have to. They don't have to follow you. They don't have to say anything, and they come and they support and they wrap you up in a little sort of comfort ball. And it's amazing how much that does help. And so I do try to focus, you get one negative comment and people do focus on that, but I'm very much like, park that, the good comments outweigh. And this is again something about setting up the group. I've had even my husband, my family, my close friends question, you're putting yourself in a position where you're losing a lot of people, you're going to funerals a lot, you make friends, and even on the social media side, I make connections with
mm,
people that I then lose. I'm putting myself in that position choosingly. why. I don't have to, but I always say because the connection and the relationship I have with those people, even if it's for a few months, it's like that whole it's better to love and better to have loved and lost than never loved at all.
Yeah.
And it's so true. I would much rather have them in my life, have that support, have that communication and that relationship with somebody, and then lose them because they've given me so much. And it's never a negative. And when I do lose them, I cry. I have a moment. Last year I went to 7 funerals in 7 months. Like, it was ridiculous. But I do feel for them. But in a way, I've gone to those funerals and cried and cried. And sometimes, again, that is a cathartic thing. I don't cry that often. I'm quite a strong person. And occasionally you need that. You need that excuse to just sob and have a bit of an outlet. And it's actually, again, that's really therapeutic itself.
It is.
So, yeah, for anyone out there that is scared about building relationships with people and friendships and getting to know people in the community, if you can take away that, if you can take away the fact that, they will give you so much, even if you do lose them at the end of the day. Yeah. And it makes me appreciate my life more because I'm like, well, I'm still here and they'd want me to live for them.
Yeah.
And you get that survivor's guilt. That's another thing living with it. You get survivor's guilt a lot. And I have to remind myself that if they were still here, they would be wanting to do everything. So do it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got nothing to add to that. I think it's absolutely perfect.
Sorry, I've gone quite deep.
No, I'm more than happy to talk about grief.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
but grief is just love unexpressed, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing to be able to go and grieve people. And I'm a big believer in crying as well. Usually it takes my wife to give me a nudge and go, you just need to cry. And I'm like, okay, I didn't realise. And then I feel better afterwards.
It's healthy. It is really healthy. And if you bottle it up too much, you're just going to crack, and not in a good way. And it's, sometimes you just have to go, this is really, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
Of course you can swear.
Fucking shit. This is really fucking shit. And remind yourself that actually you are going through something that many people would not cope well with. And there is no right or wrong in coping. There is no, just because I'm okay with certain things doesn't mean that you have to be, or vice versa. And I think that's so important that we don't follow, like, we look up to people and we get inspired by people, but we don't think that that's the norm and that's how we have to behave. And yeah, a good cry always helps.
Absolutely.
Just have crying clubs, crying sessions, just put on a sad film or something. Might be a bit nicer than a funeral.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a new start. Let's do that.
Next venture.
Next venture, yeah, the crying club.
Yeah, the crying club. Much needed for society, I think.
Oh, there you go. My entrepreneurial skills are going to come out. We'll see.
Yeah, it's so important, and I think that's really important that people hear about those building connections, because I think there is sometimes an apprehension of building connections in the community for that exact reason. And I think it's really important that people understand how positive social media can be, those little messages, all of that. I think that's something that is cathartic for both people, right? It's nice to send a nice message. It's nice to receive that nice message. And yeah, that is where those little moments are. I think a lot of people sometimes, weirdly, find it harder if they're closer to the person to send those messages. It's maybe a bit easier worldwide. I follow you on social. I connect with you over this really big thing that we might be going through or have gone through, or that resonates with me. We hear a lot of people saying, like, friends drop off and they don't know what to text. And actually, people can do this on social media instantaneously and send love from all over the world. And for some reason, that is a bit easier than doing it if it's something that you're close to. So
I do think as well with the whole friendship thing, this is where, like, I love my friends to pieces. They are and have held me up through so many bad times over the last 10 years. But they, as much as they want to try and understand how you feel, this is where, my cancer support network is so vital. Is because there's certain conversations and certain just feelings that you won't be able to ever understand if you're not in that position. And it's nothing against my friends, they try, and like my family, they try, but they know that they can't be that person. So to expect them to be it's like me almost trying to sort of, I don't know how childbirth is. Like I wouldn't, I can try and, think about that, but I wouldn't be able to actually advise or know exactly how they felt. And I think this is where getting a group of people within the community means so much, because they are the ones that you can call up and just go, I'm just knackered and I don't know
Yeah.
why, or and they'll always have a really supportive word to say, because they're understanding. They're not trying to fix it, and you
Yeah.
can't fix it. It's not a fixable problem. But just having, and that's not diminishing your love for your friends and your
No,
family
it's
at
just
all.
different, isn't it?
It's
And
different. It's different. And there's people in the community that I know that I love to pieces, but I know wouldn't be there at my funeral, for example. But I know the people that would be, and
yeah,
it's holding on to those real relationships and those real people that actually do matter. Um, that is vital, because you can try and be friends with everybody, and you're not going to be, like, in whatever way, shape, or form. You can't be friends with every single person who's got cancer out there. But equally, you find your tribe that you can
yeah,
relate to. You can phone up on a 9 o'clock of an evening and they'll still pick up. God, even when I was with cancer, you have problems of having to go to hospital because you're neutropenic or something. And I've had many a time at like 11 o'clock at night when my husband's out drinking and I'm like, my temperature's up. Can someone come and get me? And I know the people that would.
yeah,
And, they'd come in their pajamas with me to hospital because there's just certain people that would, and they'd
yeah,
understand that that was really important and really necessary. So, yeah, it's finding your tribe in all walks of life, but not being offended if your friend doesn't ask you to come to them with the hospital, because again, it's that you don't want to offend your friends that might think that they should be there. It's
yeah,
it's a really hard balance. It's a really hard balance, but I've learned, yeah, definitely you can have two. You don't have to have just one group. You can have lots of different groups for different
yeah. And
things.
it's supporting in different ways, isn't it? The
Yeah,
family and friends can support in that way that you need them to. That
yeah,
might be more practical. That might be more, you know, being there, being that emergency, or it might be whatever it needs to be. But the people that get it. Someone once described it to me as just being around people who get it, and I
yeah.
was like, that's just the most succinct
It's
way.
simple, but it's, yeah,
Yeah, they get whatever you're going through. They're not trying to fix it. It's just
they
and
get it,
that's
and they don't say the silly things.
say the silly things.
Oh, which I've had many, many in the years.
Shall we
But
dive into that now?
let's do it. No, but even I had, this year was my 10-year cancerversary in February from my initial diagnosis, and that was quite a kind of look back, especially even with my close friends. And we sort of sat. I remember chatting a few days before. I had a big party. I had a big event to celebrate it, and it's almost looking back and going, "Whoa, what has actually happened here?"
Mm,
10 years is a long time. It's a third of my life, but how much I've been through, how much I've had to contend with and learn and deal with, and park, because there's some things, emotions that you just kind of want to leave there. Um, Throwing that in with my mum being,
yeah,
losing my mum, and the other thing, it's just, yeah. I remember looking back and just going, whoa, that is a lot. For anyone, that's a lot. And then
yeah.
having the cancer stuff thrown on top, and the incurable diagnosis, and yeah. So I mean, I don't know what the future holds, and I'm not going to try and guess, because I could not have guessed what's happened. And don't get me wrong, like, going through everything I've gone through has brought so much into my life, as well as taken, it's taken everything. It's taken,
Yeah,
fertility and job, but it's given me friends that I never, would have had. It's given me opportunities. I mean, I've done catwalk modeling and, been on television and done all sorts, like photo shoots and, as I say, charitable races, and yeah, all sorts that I would have never have
mm,
dared to do. I don't, my
yeah,
confidence wouldn't have been there. And so it's given me a very different path, but it's not all negative. And that's also important to remember. Your path is never going to be simple. And as long as you let it kind of meander its way, however it wants to go. Um, and I just hope that, yeah, the future's kind and gives me opportunities and fun as long as I'm here. And then when I'm not, then I'm not.
it's not your problem.
That's
I
not my
think.
problem. Just
Don't
give
know
me
if that's
like,
appropriate.
yeah, not my problem at that point. Yeah. Yeah.
That's brilliantly said. I think if we can, I'd love to dive it because something you keep coming back to is that peer to peer support.
Yeah.
I just, part of our jobs as a charity is trying to make that happen. Part of why this podcast exists is it's not peer to peer, but it's broadcasting these themes, these topics that resonate with so many people. It's so important because there's so many different types of cancer. There's so many different pathways between all that. It's about being around those people. You've
Mm.
been really lucky in the fact that there was a young person's group
Yeah.
in Norwich. That's rare because most people who go through at a young age saying, "Oh, I was just on a ward with 60, 70 year olds," and
Oh, I've been
obviously,
to a group like that. I could have
right.
been all their granddaughter. No, there was definitely a group like that, and I quickly did not go back to that one.
Mm,
Um, yeah, we were very lucky. We were very lucky, and I think there needs to be more of that.
yeah,
Definitely, I know there are with the Maggie centres and other bits and pieces. There are a lot more, trying to do it. But again, it's younger. I feel that in the time that I've had my
mm,
cancer, there are a lot more young people being diagnosed in their 20s, in their 30s. Maybe we're just hearing about it more because of social media. But when I was, yeah, it was really difficult to find people that age. Like even the younger women's group was
yeah.
mainly 40s and 50s. Someone coming in their 20s was a bit like, oh, wow, okay.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I was very, I was fortunate that was there and that really gave me good stead for being able to find a community.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I think from someone obviously from a charity sector that works quite hard to try and create these spaces, it's where funding is tight and
Mm,
stretch of staff capacity is tight. This is why I feel so passionately grateful of the influencers because you inherently create those online spaces, whereas organizations we struggle to. Whereas actually, your page is a place for community. It's bringing
mm.
those people together. People will find people from that. It's a new way of linking people up, but I think
Oh,
it's
completely.
so important. You've got the secondary sisters page, which is obviously amazing. Then you've got the wider cancer community following your page. So I
Mm.
think it's brilliant. I don't know if you've ever reflected on that but I'm just
I
very grateful for it.
That's really lovely because I think when you do something like it, you do feel sometimes a little bit fraudy because you're like, well, I'm not really an influencer because I'm not kind of working, and I'm not just talking about my cancer. I talk about everything, but
Mm,
I think people like that. They like it being a mix of because people do sometimes come to me and say, I've just been diagnosed, and it's really good to see that you can have a life with
yeah,
cancer. And and again, that's the whole I don't want to be written off, I don't want the bucket list. I don't want to be kind of like told I've got an expiry date at the moment because while I can, living is important. And if that gives that hope to somebody, and even I always think this, like even if that person's journey doesn't go very well and doesn't maybe they aren't here that long. That wasn't very good, but they weren't here, aren't here. I'm not very good at the English. Sorry. But yeah, if they're not here that long, hopefully they've still had that little bit of I can possibly live in a good way. You don't know what's around the corner for everyone, and some people, sadly, it is quite quick, and I can't be responsible for that, and I can't, take that on board. But yeah, hope I just want to give a bit of hope to people, and it's just so nice when you get those messages of saying, your page has given me hope that I might be able to have a life with this. And just that little bit of hope is what matters.
absolutely invaluable. You have mentioned a plethora of amazing organizations, and
Hmm.
we will make sure that we put links to all these great charities. Is there any that you'd like to focus on? Anything you're doing, involved in that you want to shout about?
Well, as I've mentioned, Little Lifts, they are an incredible charity. If no one knows of them, go and find them. They are a breast cancer charity set up by my friend Oa in Norwich, and they started off just so she was given a lot of goodies throughout her treatment.
Mhm.
Her family and friends would sort of send her little parcels and chocolate and all sorts. And so she kind of wanted to pass that on to other people. So she designed these boxes that are amazing and they get delivered out to anyone now in the UK going through chemotherapy or radiotherapy can apply for a box, or they're based in the sort of Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex hospital partnerships. So there's 10 different hospital partnerships, and they're just they're lovely boxes. The community is being built. I mean, I raised some money at this event that I did in February, and we're actually this year launching the first secondary breast cancer retreat, which we hope
Amazing.
we'll be able to do another one next year. Like, we're just sort of working out, because I'm hopefully going to be able to help fund it by, fundraising I do. So, because they're really, it's not just about the boxers now, it's they want to open up the community space more. So if you have got breast cancer and you're not in one of the hospital partnerships and you are going through chemotherapy or radiotherapy, make sure you go to their website and apply. So I am ambassador for them. Very, very proud. It's just one of those charities that I've been involved with since day dot. I call myself the unemployed employee because I'm in the office quite a lot. I'm like Owen says, "Can you come and do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can." So that's brilliant. I do a lot with breast cancer now. They're an amazing charity. Again, the support Future Dreams in London. If anyone's got breast cancer, again, Future Dreams House is wonderful. They do a lot of the research around secondaries as well, which I think is vital. I'm going on Saturday to the Cancer in Common party. That's quite a new charity, but it's been running for a couple of years. So there's loads, and these are great because a lot of them are around the community side. I love the fun, I love the funding for research and all that, but I also am aware that we have to help people now who are actually going through it, and that's where the community side really, really comes in.
And community led as well,
Yeah,
which is massively important.
absolutely.
And I would like to thank Owa and Little List because after a couple of conversations, she actually inspired us to create our Thriver packs.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
you talk about knock-on effect.
Yeah.
The germ cell cancer community now has free cancer support packs
Okay.
handed out because of
So
Owa's
similar
fantastic.
thing.
Similar thing.
Amazing.
So
I
just
mean, this
taking
is
it
the
for our
thing, and this
community.
is where, when we talk about charities coming together, it's not competition.
Never.
It's like, how can we help the wider organisation and the wider people? And it's always about them.
Yeah.
And actually, like you say, it's like, it's not going, oh, we're copying. It's, we can do this, but for our own type. Or yeah, that's brilliant.
Absolutely. And
Love
if
that.
someone's already doing it, let them do it. Do
Yeah.
it well.
Do it well, and
just support it and celebrate it.
absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. Love that.
One thing we do with all of our guests is 5 quick fire questions, if that's okay. So, number 1 is, what advice would you give to someone who's worried they might have cancer?
Go to your GP. If you are told you are too young, go to another GP. Go back to a GP. Keep going to a GP. Annoy the hell out of your GP. Yeah, if you think something's wrong, get it checked out. Get it looked at by the hospital, because you're better to be safe than sorry, and you're not wasting anyone's time ever. Yeah. And if you can't get through to them, get your friends to come with you and pressurize them, definitely, because it can make such a difference. And I know so many people that get told they're too young, and it ends up being something.
Absolutely. And I think if I'm going to speak on your behalf, are they happy to name drop you or someone else and be like, not too young? Because I've had this once. A doctor once told me I was too young for cancer. I'm watching their face drop when I said my brother died at 24 to cancer. They very quickly sent me for another test.
Please say, Laura, who was 25, she got breast cancer. And yeah, please drop my name, please drop my age, because if it can happen to me. And the other thing is check. And if you think anything, and that's whether your skin's changing, you've got pain anywhere, you've got any problem, not just breast stuff, anything that's abnormal for you for more than a couple of weeks, get it looked at.
Perfect advice. Thank you very much. What was the most impactful thing someone has done for you since your diagnosis?
I think, do you know what? It's the little things. It is literally the things like the someone being at the end of the phone to take you to hospital if you need to. It's those things that I think for me was the most impactful. The big gestures that are not. I don't think they're the ones. And I just, it was the people that are there that really show their true colours, that actually listen as well. It's the listening, it's the being there, it's the people that will just put around and sit and watch a film with you when you're feeling rubbish, because sometimes it's those moments that you feel quite low and lonely, and they're the little gestures that people do that make such a difference and make you feel normal and cared for. So yeah, nothing massive, but
Love that. It's not just a one-off big thing.
It's not one off big things, it's the little things. Someone just cooking your dinner and bringing it around unexplained, someone coming around and going, "Oh, I'll make your bed for you," or all the little
Oh, that's
treats.
glorious.
I know.
I've
But
got to ask two questions. Go-to movie when you're sad, and what's that meal that someone's making you?
go-to movie. I like The Holiday.
Such a
But
good
it's
movie.
because it's like I watch it around Christmas, cozy in my
Yeah.
in my jammies. It's just feel good. I cry every time, but I also smile every time because it's just one of those. I love it. And food. Do you know what? So really simple when I had my day of diagnosis, I got four of my friends to come around that evening. I told them I needed to talk to you. They came around with no questions asked. Came around, told them I had cancer. They disappeared off to a little Tesco up the road. Came back, bags full of pizza and crisps and prosecco, and it wasn't anything like special, but it was just the fact that they'd gone and done that and brought it over, and you know didn't I didn't ask for that. It was just they went and did it off their own accord, as we just sat there eating pizza and drinking prosecco all night, laughing. So it's not one particular meal, but just having people there.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful for just their company.
Love that. What's the worst thing someone has said to you about having cancer?
Oh, there's a few. um, oh God, the worst thing. I've definitely had. I mean, if we're going on the social media stuff, I've definitely had people say, you're doing things for attention and all of that. I mean, I'm definitely not. I just have cancer. But face to face, I'd say, the people that have sometimes. I did get asked once what it's like to have a boob job because they were considering it. And I was like, that's not what you say to someone who's had reconstruction. It's not the same. And there's a lot of like little things like that. I wouldn't say they're like terrible because I don't think it sounds awful, but you can't really offend someone that's already got terminal illness because you joke about
The dark
the dark
humor.
humor.
Yeah.
I'm quite okay with that. But yeah, I guess things around the whole, what's it like to have a boob job and what's it, and then you'll be fine. My granny is still here and she's in her 90s, and I'm like, yeah, but your granny's very different to me.
Yeah.
So
Hear a lot of comparison, the toxic positivity.
or you do get the ones that say, oh yeah, I had my aunt so and so and she died. Like,
Oh, cool.
great,
Thanks.
thanks. Just what I want to hear when I'm newly diagnosed. But I just laugh about things now.
Is it nervous diarrhea coming out of them? Is that where a
I
lot
think
of this
so.
people can't maliciously? I'm hoping desperately that people don't maliciously say things.
People don't think.
Yeah.
They don't think how it's going to come out.
Yeah.
And you get this. I find sometimes I do get the people going, you don't have kids, you're lucky. And they can sometimes even be from people that have got cancer with children. And it's those sort of little comments that actually dig you more into the depth of your stomach. It's like, oh, because they're the ones that I'm like, but I think you're lucky because you have kids, and and I wish I could be in that position.
Yeah.
So yeah, people who compare on the child, use their children as bait and sort of, oh, I'm worse off than you because I've got a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old or something, and you're like, yeah, but I was wanting to be a mum and can't have them. So those are the ones that sting a little bit.
What would you? That completely wrong. Let's start again. What advice would you give to someone recently diagnosed with cancer?
Take time to digest it. Don't walk before you can run with it. Do your research. Keep close to your loved ones. Stay, find your little nip to start with. Come to terms with it. Reach out, when you want to for support. But, I think it's that don't expect to be. Remember people that are going through it and are talking about it online have been through that and don't expect to be in their place immediately. Because I do think there is this element of people just expect that they should be doing it a certain way. And sometimes it is that bring it back down to who you are, come to terms with it with your loved ones before you sort of go out to the masses. And because it is a really, really hard time. It's shit. and allow yourself to just sit in that for a while.
Sit in the shit for a
Sit in
little
the shit. Not literally, hopefully, but yes.
That comes later with chemo sometimes.
Yeah, you might be.
There's the dark humour.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Been there, done that.
Oh, we don't have to include this. My mum's got a great one. She had a chemo and she told this on her podcast. And she obviously had an accident. And my dad just looked at her and went, "Look, silver lining, it's not on your socks." Like, you got to look at the silver lining here, Lorna.
Oh, I think you can't go lower than how you are in chemo.
Yeah.
Once you've had chemo, that is literally the lowest. I mean, my husband's seen far too much. He still married me. It's fine.
Oh, dear. Right. Brill. Thank you so much. We got one more, which is, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from having cancer?
Probably that life doesn't go as planned. I was very much the planner. I was very much, I want to be married by this point. I want to have kids by this point. I want this career. I want this type of house. And that completely changed. My path changed. And I think that is just realize that life won't necessarily go the way you think it's going to go. Take the opportunities that come. Don't sweat on the small stuff. And live your life. Live life, because life is precious and life isn't guaranteed. You are not guaranteed to get to retirement. So don't save all your pennies till you're 70 and you go on that holiday when you're old and grey, because life is now and you've got to start living now for the moment. And don't, this whole, you must save up to buy the biggest house and mortgage yourself to the max, and you must buy the designer handbag that's going to sit in your wardrobe. These things are not going to matter. It's the memories you make with your friends and family. It's the things you do, the things you see. Yeah. So live life and just enjoy every single moment.
Perfect way to end a podcast. Perfect advice. Could listen to you giving advice all day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly. And I know you will have helped so many people with the words that you shared with us today. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to our amazing supporters and funders who make this podcast happen. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review and follow us on social media at Thrive Against Cancer. And be sure to check out our other episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. If you want to help support our mission to give a voice to the cancer community, please contact us or visit our website to learn more at thriveagainstcancer.co.uk.